So I recorded this entire video thinking intellectual property was called intelligent property, and I refuse to re-record this hour-long video, so let's just pretend I'm saying the right thing, okay? Why do they look so fucking similar? One problem people brought up in my first You Should Pirate video was with me keeping accounts just to prove that it wasn't a money issue. As it turns out, detractors just ignored that part anyway. So you know what? You were right. I should adopt a stance of do as I do. Besides, I've got an idea. So firstly, fuck this, and fuck... Actually, I should probably keep the Netflix. My roommate might be kind of pissed at her if I kill her account. Hey, streaming sites, you want my money? How about this $300, which is roughly the amount I'd need to keep up with seasonal anime for 6 months? Yeah, you want this? Yeah? Oh no, look, sorry, it looks like I've donated it to an actual charity. Fuck you, Consumer Revolt. Ladies and gentlemen, tonight I'm going to tear apart all the biggest counter-arguments brought up in the past year towards my stance on piracy. With this video, I'm going to prove once and for all why exclusive licenses should be boycotted and how the current market for streaming is anti-competitive and anti-consumer. But I need your help for one last piece of evidence. The narrative of my detractors is that pirates are entitled children who do not want to and would never support the industry no matter the quality of the product given, as opposed to disenfranchised consumers who want to support but do not have a product that is acceptable for today's technological standards. This is the Animea Dormitory Facility. It's a charity designed to help out startup animators in a low-paying, cutthroat industry. Anime YouTubers like Mother's Basement have been plugging this one for a while. Last year, altogether, they succeeded funding. But this year, the charity drive has 2, maybe 1 month left, depending on when this video out, and has still over 10k to raise. They have not been so lucky this time. So here is your call to action. If you are unhappy with Crunchyroll and other streaming sites, or anything I showed you in the last video or this one, if you want to see a golden age for this industry where innovations will make legal sites actually able to compete with piracy, help me make this statement. That statement being, we have the money to give you, but your product is terrible and shouldn't be encouraged. I have never, in my whole YouTube career, asked for shares, so if I'm allowed to do that just once, please listen to me. Share this video. I pulled a weird algorithm trick to make the last one do well. I can't do that again. So I need shares to make sure this video gets to the people who saw the last one. But quite frankly, even if you just share the idea, that's fine, I'm happy. Together, we can both make a statement and genuinely help this industry in a way that doesn't reward businesses that don't actually care. The Pirates of the West can become a huge symbol of rebellious pride if we will it to. We can be like the chaotic good of the anime community. So cut your Crunchyroll account, donate as much as you can to this charity. God only knows I did, I just got done paying like 3.5k cat surgery and now I'm eating pot noodles for the rest of the month. Get as many people and YouTubers who have defended piracy involved in this as you can, and blow this number out of the fucking water. Also, added bonus, hit that goal and I'll do a face reveal. It's worth it. I'm fucking adorable. Motherfuckers. This was gonna be a Patreon reward, but you know what? Fuck my Patreon. Cut it if you want. Just reach that goal. I'll happily eat rice for a month just so I don't have to look like an idiot. Just reach that fucking goal. Alright, time for my part of the deal. Time to counter all of these arguments. But first, a refresher on my core argument. An exclusive license is when a service buys the rights to a piece of intelligent property under the terms that the IP holder doesn't sell it to anyone else. Buying a normal license will improve the product your business is providing, but buying an exclusive license instead has literally no other function but to make your competitor's product worse, because you just paid so that they could not provide consumers with something. That is the very cornerstone of a failed competitive market. A good competitive market is about raising your own product above your competitors, not restricting your competitors from making theirs better. As a result, exclusive licenses create a situation where most anime fans must subscribe to every streaming site to watch everything they want to watch, or they subscribe to one to feel ethical, pirate the rest, and then forget about the one they subscribe to because their choice of streaming sites makes no difference. And it would be like a pointless pain in the ass to change your subscription every season when they're really just doing it to feel moral. This means that consumers mostly aren't choosing between competitors, making streaming sites an oligopoly, or a market with limited competition. This explains why these companies don't innovate to the level of a real competitive market, and explains why piracy is so prominent, as the main way these sites compete with each other is to fight over what site has what exclusive licenses. The more competition there is, the less anime you get on each site. This is why I believe exclusive licenses are anti-competitive and anti-consumer, and piracy should be used to effectively boycott these practices. Especially when you consider that the right innovation could even lead the most die-hard pirates to switching to legal and create a golden age for this industry. Here's how I'm going to format this video. This is mainly going to be a response to Mother's Basement, but as we go through, I'll be responding to other arguments when they're relevant. Now this video here isn't entirely a response to me, although I am no doubt the catalyst and the main target. A bunch of arguments in here are ones I never made and am not necessarily defending. I'm gonna skip around and over those parts for time reasons, but I implore you to go watch his video so that you know I'm not getting anything out of context. Here is a direct link, right here, in the middle of the fucking video, because even preschoolers know how important it is to hear both sides of the argument! From 19 seconds to 3 minutes is arguing against the idea that Crunchyroll doesn't support the anime industry, as well as a justification for why they're not transparent about where their money goes. 3 minutes to 3 minutes 50 is a segue. 3:50 to 4:30 is what he believes to be the only justification for pirating, which basically boils down to if you have no legal option or if you've already bought the Blu-ray. And right off the bat, this is one of my core issues with this video, that being that it makes zero exceptions for anti-consumerism. If we were to take his principle to its logical extreme, then it means if Crunchyroll decided to charge people $80 a day with pop-ups, anyone who pirates would still be considered an asshole. Now granted, antitrust laws exist to deny that level of extremity, but my point is, by his logic, streaming sites can simply do no wrong. Even if they were to, let's say, dramatically lower their bitrate to cost cut, according to him, customers' only option is to maintain a higher level of morals than the company they are supporting or forego the product entirely. But the core problem with that is that the choice effectively means that companies don't have to worry about treating their customers badly so long as they don't treat them so badly that they push their consumers past this extreme line. This is why competitive markets are so important, because if a company is intentionally not providing the best service they can, a competitor can take advantage. And it's why this problem wouldn't exist if singular streaming sites didn't exclusivize and monopolize, we'll talk about this in a bit, certain shows. I'm gonna assume that he doesn't mean this, and he does in fact have a limit on what streaming sites should and should not be able to do. Like he's stayed true to this idea so far, but something tells me that since Jeff is so left-leaning on Twitter, if streaming sites, hypothetically started monetarily supporting Trump, he'd start to feel very uncomfortable about the choice he's given himself. I simply don't think he has been pushed far enough to understand why it's unfair and anti-competitive to have consumers make this extreme choice. This is why I think it is far more reasonable to say that the difference between Jeff and I as consumers is not one of entitlement or selfishness as he claims. The difference between us is the level of what we believe to be an acceptable way to treat a customer. Although it's quite pointless to think about motives though. Anyone can come up with motive. It's not an argument. Just as Jeff can say, oh, you're just making excuses, I can say, oh, Jeff is paid off by Crunchyroll. And even if you are, which no one can prove, you can still make a good argument with an ill motive. So how about we just focus on arguments instead? Yeah? Okay. 4:30 to 6:50 is a counter-argument to people quoting Gabe Newell saying piracy is almost always a service problem. He says this is an out-of-context quote. I say this is an appeal to authority fallacy to begin with. The argument for evolution isn't because Darwin is an expert on evolution, it's the fucking islands and observable bird beaks and shit. This is the same as Gabe Newell on Steam. Even if Gabe Newell's quote was literally, Unique Namosaurus is right, it does not necessarily make Unique Namosaurus right. Same thing for the assertion that piracy is almost always a service problem. This is just the opinion by a guy. Just because it's Gabe Newell doesn't make him right. For the record, I think Jeff's interpretation of the quote is wrong, but it's semantics and it doesn't matter anyway. From 5:21 to 7:10, the video transitions more into Steam as an example and why Steam and anime streaming are on the same level of service. But then he stops and says that the opposing sides argue that there are other differences, and begins to actually argue these on a case-by-case basis. This is where we finally get into exclusive licenses and innovation, which is the crux of my argument. So I'll let this play out.
None of those points really hold up to scrutiny, though. Legal streaming platforms have smaller content libraries and worse subtitles largely as a consequence of being legal. Every single series that they have has to be licensed, which costs money. Plus, some older shows like Evangelion and Love Hina are stuck in licensing limbo and aren't available anywhere. So right off the bat, there's a monetary obstacle preventing any platform from truly having everything.
For the record, I'm not particularly too concerned about singular derpy legal cases caused by the nature of company ownership because I don't see ill intent. And remember that phrase, because it's going to come back. What concerns me is trying to find the biggest shows of the season and lock it away behind your own service. Not having Evangelion sucks, but intentionally locking away the biggest shows every season guarantees that you will inconvenience the majority of customers for as long as that service exists. If Anime Strike didn't exclusivize, no one would have been this angry at the double paywall. They would have gone to a competitor, like in any real competitive market. Like, people were pissed off at United Airlines, but that would pale in comparison to the outrage if they had somehow, bought the exclusive rights to Canada and you had to fly United if you wanted to get there. That's a really bad analogy. No one wants to go to Canada. Point is, people are mad because individual shows are being monopolized. And I mean that. A lot of people, Mother's Basement included, look on the word monopoly like it's an evil thing that's completely illegal. It's actually not. In fact, intelligent property is often referred to as a legal monopoly, because that is literally what it is designed to be. Without intelligent property, we wouldn't be able to encourage the creation of things that are easily copied, like stories, pictures, and inventions. It's totally fair for these things to be monopolized, but that shouldn't mean you should treat your consumers like shit because it is. Hell, not even that. The amazing thing about a true competitive market is that it rewards businesses that give their consumers the better product. If you work in fast food and the store next door starts offering better quality eggs, you gotta step up your game, offer new products, new ideas, new services. Even when it's economically inviable to offer any better of a product, like you've hit your budget, competition takes the form of, how can we do it cheaper? And if they find a way that rubs consumers the wrong way, consumers can just switch, so they'll always find ethical ways instead. Not that companies don't try to sometimes get away with their consumers not finding out, but if they do, they get crucified. Companies are always incentivized to not just maintain their business, but make consumers happier than they were before. And as a result, it pushes the industry in these great upwards directions as it rewards businesses for finding the best way to give consumers what they want. If IP didn't exist, you could theoretically see some good. When right-hand man to Monty creator of Ruby, published a 35-page document and broke NDA just to tell people that Rooster Teeth was ruining the late creator's vision, he could have instead just gone off and created a competing Ruby, and customers would have absolutely been happier with that. Now, that seems nice, but if IP didn't exist, it would also mean Ruby wouldn't exist at all in the first place, because someone can just remake or even just download Ruby and sell it for half the price because they don't need to earn back anywhere near the cost of production, and it would be totally legal. As a result, making an IP wouldn't be profitable, so no one would do it. This is why you can own an idea, but that inherently makes it a monopoly because you're not allowed to copy it, hence the name copyright. And it's why there are all these exceptions and the rules are awkward and unclear, but the important takeaway is IP gives you a monopoly out of necessity, not because lawmakers wanted IP holders to not strive to give customers the best product they can. And that's going to be very important when we start talking about consoles, so hold on.
And that's not even factoring in the issue of exclusivity. Having platform exclusives drives sales for these companies in much the same way that Mario sells Nintendo consoles, Uncharted sells PlayStations, and Xbox has no games.
This is something a lot of people brought up. I think even Digibro brought up this one, so I'm going to spend a bit of time on it. But it all comes down to a bandwagon fallacy. Just because others are doing it, it doesn't make it right. The problem with bringing up console wars, I think, is that it's more or less the exact same problem. I got a lot of comments comparing my video to console exclusives. Make no mistake, people are pissed at it too. It's no use you saying, well, consoles do it. Yeah, it's shitty when consoles do it. There is, however, one big difference that makes the outrage with streaming more justified, and that is the indication of ill intent. So, let me break this down. When Nintendo publishes a crazy unique game that cannot be disconnected from their hardware, it makes perfect sense that it's only on a Nintendo console, and no one will have a problem with it. Not only can you not pirate it, you're also not very justified in doing so. Even when Nintendo makes its own game, maybe since they made it, it seems ethical for them to only have it on their own console. Maybe. We'll come back to that. But when a sequel to a popular third-party title appears only on a Nintendo console when it used to be on something else, has no integration with the hardware or console software, and would clearly be easy to at least port to PC because, emulators exist, then that's clearly been paid for as an exclusive license, and Nintendo are only doing it because they want to force you to buy an extra $300 piece of plastic first, when you have no intention of buying any other games. This is happening for no other reason than intelligent property laws let them. Likewise, if Microsoft produces a piece of shit console with, as Mother's Basement says, no games, but you're a die-hard Halo fan, guess what? You're fucked. If I buy a Switch, I should be buying it because I want to play Breath of the Wild in the wild. I should be buying it because of a feature of the console, not because it's intentionally the only place I can get it legally. And I'm sure you can see why this problem goes tenfold when you look at streaming sites, because it is all non-integrated and it is all third-party, except in the case of originals. And let me just say, Netflix originals that actually get popular, like say BoJack Horseman, that is one of the strongest cases I can see presented for exclusive licenses, because without them, this might not exist. And I'll admit here myself, this is a very grey area of my argument, and it's why I think it's the best rebuttal you can make.
Hey, it's 4 a.m. Unique here. It's ASMR Unique. I'm sick and I have to be quiet, but I feel the need to add a couple of things. This whole thing about ill intent is an older, weaker part of the script, and it doesn't really align well with my core argument that is intelligent property wasn't designed to be used like this, and it shouldn't be tying it to real competitive markets like consoles or services to make them oligopolies, and IPs in general should be doing the best for consumers because it's a monopoly and it doesn't have a competitive market to make up for ill intent. Also, to the people saying Bayonetta 2 was funded by Nintendo and it wouldn't exist without it, abusing a monopoly wasn't the only plausible option. They can find a normal investor like everyone else, or they can even crowdfund. Like, we live in a world where the creator of Castlevania made a $5.5 million Kickstarter. This is also a good counter-argument to Netflix exclusives. Just like make one episode, a massive following, it would work for Infinity Train. It doesn't need to be on Cartoon Network. Or it didn't need to be on Cartoon Network. Also, apparently consoles sell at a loss, which is interesting, but if you only had to buy one console, you could sell them for higher, and if you lose the war because someone sold a better console, well, too bad. Welcome to the competitive market. That's how it works. Alright, bye.
Not because exclusives have any inherent good, but because the fact that they can exclusivize, it incentivizes Netflix to fund new shows. But when I see shit like EA exclusivizing all their sequels on their new platform, or when Prince of Tennis is only on Daisuke, but the sequel is mysteriously only on Crunchyroll, or if you want a more modern example, the Danmachi franchise is split over multiple platforms. Or how about Kingdom Hearts? Feel sorry for those guys. PS2, Game Boy Advance, back to PS2, Nintendo DS, PSP! Kingdom Hearts, everybody. The story that's as rich as you have to be to fucking buy the thing. These are, I think, the clearest examples of ill intent. Companies that do this are clearly just ignoring porting and licensing, or even simply just keeping the status quo as an option, and are willingly inconveniencing customers because they either can get more money out of them, or force them to use a completely unnecessary product. And you expect me to feel morally obligated to support something that proudly and openly displays how it's abused a monopoly on the box? Fuck out of here. They act like it's a feature. Companies should not be rewarded for intentionally not providing the best experience. See, in a normal competitive market, if an entrepreneur sees a company intentionally ignoring a demand from consumers even though it's both economically and technically viable, then the entrepreneur can step in, provide the demand, and reap the rewards. But as intelligent property gives you a monopoly, you're free to avoid giving your customers the best experience because it's literally illegal for your competitors to take advantage of your ill intent. This is why not porting high-demand products constitutes abuse. And because you have customers who end up having to buy everything just to support their favorite game, they are now negligible in the competitive market because they aren't choosing which console they like best. If two things are bought by the same person, it's not a competitive market and there's no pressure to innovate. That's the bottom line, and it creates immense growing pains for this industry, where there's limited to no innovation. More competition results in a worse product and a vastly greater pull to piracy. Also, if you don't believe that this is a problem, there is literally a legal term for debatably exactly what consoles do under US antitrust law, which is a collection of laws designed to control monopolies, anti-competitive practices, and problems with IP. Because that's what people don't understand about intelligent property. It is inherently monopolistic. As I said before, it is literally referred to as a legal monopoly because IP law at its core is designed to incentivize the creation of things that are hard to think of but very easy to copy. By giving you ownership of an invention or a piece of writing, it gives you the potential to profit from your hard work. Ironically, when I first made that video, I thought I was some pioneer of the IP debate. As it turns out, I just stumbled across something that has been in debate for centuries. Everyone already knew IP was a monopoly. That was the point. Seriously, look at any outline on the topic. It uses monopolies to incentivize innovation. So when a service buys an exclusive license, make no mistake, they are monopolizing it. Of course, you can't just give someone a monopoly, so in order to control them, antitrust laws were designed to protect consumers from their abusive potential. You know what it's called sometimes in other countries? Competition law. The whole intelligent property debate is built on the balance between an infinitely raging war between the need for monopolies to incentivize innovation and the competition to control them. So sometimes you do run into these very sticky problems, and sometimes you do get shit like Apple policing the copyright on their schematics so that they can have a monopoly on their computer repairs. Many of these issues are court-worthy. Please don't believe that these companies must be in the right just because consumers are breaking the law in response. Anyway, the term you can debatably put console exclusives under is called tying, and it's in reference to selling one thing exclusively with another to force a consumer to buy something they don't want. A combination of antitrust cases being very high profile along with consoles still providing innovation, we'll talk about this in a bit, and the messy ethics of what does and does not need to be exclusive means that they don't invite a court case, but I for one would argue that it's anti-competitive, which is the spirit of these laws. Although let's be real, law is difficult and I've only done like 20 hours of research and god fuck me, I ended up on the Wikipedia page for like transistors for some reason and I'm barely going to use any of it. But this is why I talk about ill intent, because it's more core to the issue and I actually feel confident in what I'm talking about. Speaking of, even first-party console exclusives are ethically questionable and probably have a similar ill motive. And okay, look, I know saying first-party properties shouldn't be exclusivized is going to rub people the wrong way, but it's important to realize that just because Nintendo made their own game, it doesn't change the fact that exclusivizing it intentionally hurts the competitive market just like any other exclusive license. Nintendo is a company that sells both consoles and games. If they want to profit from their games, they can still earn money through licenses and royalties, along with having them on their own console. If they want to make cool new consoles that push the technology and how we play and make people want to port their games to them, then they can profit from that too. But by intentionally and unnecessarily refusing to separate these two things when it's perfectly, economically, and technologically viable to do so, when in a normal, non-IP competitive market where companies, assuming it's viable, are rewarded for providing consumers the best possible experience, it is a glaring flaw in the system. The government gave them the right to earn money from an IP, a monopoly, because it would be impossible for them to profit otherwise. If they're intentionally not doing the best they can for consumers to make up for not having a true competitive market, then they have failed the spirit of these laws, and yes, I think it constitutes an abuse of their monopoly. Like, okay, I never bought a Wii U or a Switch, and there's only one game I really want to play, Breath of the Wild. Emulators have already got working versions of it running on PC, and they can add like 4K textures, and it looks beautiful. And it really doesn't suffer from any lack of hardware integration. There is no excuses here for Nintendo to not get an outside company to port it over to PC themselves. There would be loads of potential profit in it. Except it's not when you consider the potential extra $300 they can get out of customers like me. So, because of company ill intent, I'm now forced to pay an extra $300 for a shittier Breath of the Wild, even when I would have happily paid the $60 to have it on PC. Hell, I'll pay an extra like $20 just to cover the cost of a port. That seems totally fair. You can also make the same argument for like Bloodborne, because as much as I love From Software, I don't want a PS4. There is literally nothing I want to play. And again, similarly, this is why Game of Thrones is the most pirated show of all time. Nobody wants HBO Go or cable, they just want Game of Thrones, and the brand is intentionally not giving them that option in order to plug their irrelevant service. That shouldn't be happening. Let people buy your licenses and give you royalties. Don't blame us because you abused a monopoly. It is good that in 2014, HBO realized that they were pushing consumers way too far, just like Anime Strike did, and let you access HBO from Amazon and Hulu, which debatably helps restore streaming site competition and innovation. But they're still tying their licenses together and forcing millions of Game of Thrones fans to buy shit they don't want. So they're still abusing the monopoly. But it's worth noting that if it wasn't for piracy, HBO wouldn't have been forced to even go this far. And that's my point. Piracy has the ability to correct monopolies. Consumers just have to learn what their rights are, and they don't even know the half of how far they go. Well, this single rebuttal is taking a really long time. How about we take a break for a message from our completely shoehorned and irrelevant sponsor? Because this video is affiliating for private internet access. As a lover of Linux and public domain books, I love Qubit Torrent, as it lets me press this convenient add plugins button and add all sorts of different plugins that let me search torrent sites conveniently within the application. There's a whole list of interesting stuff, but I stick to Linux Tracker because I love open source operating systems. There is nothing else on this list of any interest. And even though I'm doing legal things, I've heard word of ISPs tracking what you do, and as an otherwise upstanding member of society, I feel uncomfortable about my dirty Linux fetish being monitored by my ISP. That's why I use private internet access. It's a VPN that, stops that. Real talk, I was originally offered a sponsor with NordVPN for a flat fucking 1,000 USD, but my research led me to private internet access, and it actually has more than one server in Australia and doesn't seem to run slowly. Unlike Nord, I can literally leave it on in the background and literally forget it's even on. So I feel happy recommending it. Even as I was writing this script, I forgot that it was even on, and when I saw it, it actually kind of gives you this nice warm feeling of security. It's kind of nice, actually. You get a lot of mixed results in terms of what the best one is, but in my experiences, as far as VPNs for a more casual audience, it seems like it's cheap and it does its job well. Apparently they're bad with customer service and their money-back guarantees, but that's all the dirt I've found. So I don't think it's gonna matter if you need just a simple VPN. So I threw all that money away and instead got an affiliate link. Oh, the things I do for integrity. And just to ensure my integrity, I'll be donating all of the profit from this affiliation for the first 2 months to the Animator Dormitory facility. So not only can you make sure your ISP doesn't invade your privacy, you can also support the point of this video. Not that the sponsor has anything to do with the video. This is just, this is something nice I'm doing. This is a completely normal shoehorn sponsorship in the middle of the video, just like every other YouTube does. And you know how I love my tasteless sponsorships that hurt the video quality? Yep. Links to private internet access in the description. This whole hoarding of exclusive licenses isn't even a particularly new issue when you look at patents. In the past, firms have valued their monopoly so highly that they sit on patents and do nothing, just like streaming sites do with licenses. Antitrusts have sometimes even intervened and drove companies like AT&T to license out their patents to a bunch of potential competitors in order to restore progress and innovation. Oh look, that's the same company that owns Crunchyroll, what a surprise. And I'll be honest, as an addendum to my previous video, there's actually some innovation with streaming services. Particularly Netflix that pioneered offline downloads and that little button that lets you script the intro. Hidevers also has like a little chat feature. Other sites like Amazon and now VRV, while never doing anything new, have also eventually copied the offline downloads. Also, Crunchyroll is now doing dubs. Technically not an innovation because it's not a new thing, but, you know, improvement nonetheless. Truth is, innovation is a choice, and some companies might believe different things about how to improve their bottom line. Nintendo, for instance, do a shit ton of innovation for some reason, but they'll still happily use their monopoly to abuse consumers in things like Switch Online. And I mean, companies like Warhammer and HTC Vive have taken radically different approaches to licensing, but with streaming sites, it's arguably unnecessary. Oh, did that innovation help High Dive? No, I wonder why. And there is most definitely a trend towards buying exclusive licenses and hurting competitors rather than improving their own product. And looking at any other non-IP industry will show you vast differences in the quantity of innovations coming out. YouTube, currently struggling to be profitable, has added a bunch of new features this year because of it. This here is a graph of Samsung's milestone innovations in just its fucking camera. Hell, at the time of writing this script, I went down to my local bubble tea store and boom, yeah, it's a new flavor. How about I literally searched Uber and Lyft for examples as I looked for this shit 15 fucking hours ago. Seriously, in healthy markets, new shit is happening every other week. It's great that Netflix is innovating at least a little bit, but it's been over a year since the last thing I consider a real innovation, and especially, there is no guarantee that that won't completely stop once they've forced everyone else out of the market. They may just be on an all-guns-blazing warpath right now. Once they have full control, we are completely at their mercy, and it'll be because of exclusive licenses. It's going to make any new upstart service with a good idea completely incapable of entering the market, and Netflix will be able to do whatever it wants, and that'll probably be to take low innovation down to no innovation. And that's the bottom line. The IP laws that exclusive licenses were built on were designed to incentivize innovation that is either not happening or barely happening. You want to know where that money is going instead? I wonder, where could this money be going? Where is it? Look closer, something has gone dreadfully wrong. I mean, Netflix has already shown that they're not even interested in appealing to our hardcore demographic. That binge-watching model where they release everything at once has been the bane of the anime community for a while now, and they refuse to change because it works better for their mainstream audience. In a normal competitive market, that would mean niche services could step in to fulfill our needs, but exclusive licenses means that Netflix will kill off any attempt to provide us hardcore fans because it means a service would exist that gives out their binge-watching shows earlier. Oh hey, another angle of this? Come over here. I want to show you something. This here is my roommate's Disney movie collection. She's not like me. She refuses to pirate because she's convinced she has to support her hobby. She started collecting DVDs because Disney started to tear their licenses off of Netflix to start their own streaming service, Disney+. Let me reiterate. In response to what people like Mother's Basement will call a competitive market, a consumer responded by buying DVDs. Ladies and gentlemen, why are we going backwards? Seriously, the internet has provided a brilliant way forward for convenient entertainment, and consumers are choosing to go backwards in technology. Again, look closer. Something has gone dreadfully wrong. Also, I want to stress, I don't think I want IP laws changed, at least for now. It's a pain in the ass that these things had to be handled this way, but IP laws do exist for a reason. What I do want is for consumers to embrace piracy as a form of boycott for when IP laws get abused. Like in the case of exclusive licenses where there is a failed competitive market, consumers should have the moral justification to make their own judgment on a company's intent and punish them for it if they believe it to be fair. resulting in, hopefully, a pseudo-competitive market. But I do hope that one day we will see a time when a Nintendo-made Harry Potter game exists, a time when there were more choices for a Berserk adaptation than the one that was obviously a cost-cutting hack job. When Bandai Namco isn't incentivized just to shit out a widely panned remaster of Dark Souls, an obvious cash grab where so many of us fans were begging for a rework of the rushed areas of the game. If Bandai Namco could be forced to license out Dark Souls, if fans could earn money from making their own Dark Souls remastered, consumers would actually get what they want. And oh, Paper Mario, my poor sweet baby, what have they done to you? I mean, what a world we live in. The acclaimed series Avatar: The Last Airbender can shit out some of the worst quality DVDs in existence, and fans have to step in and fix their shit for free. This wouldn't happen in a true competitive market. Also, if you're wondering why consoles tend to improve at least a decent amount, it's because since these consoles run at such a high price point, there's a lot less people willing to buy all the consoles as there are people buying all the streaming services. So you still get a lot of consumers making a choice, which is at least more competitive, but still vastly anti-consumer. Because in a non-IP competitive market, an entrepreneur would see Nintendo intentionally not providing consumers with something both technically and economically viable and rush to fill that niche. It's just that the monopolies that IP invokes makes doing that illegal. And despite how the price point forces a little more competition, there would still be vastly more innovation without exclusives. If all consumers just chose one console, the war would solely be about features rather than what is debatably bricks with different brand names. Also, add a bonus, you don't have to be a mega corporation to join the market. If an entrepreneur designs a console with a bunch of amazing features, and with like the sleekest design, you won't automatically be a console with no games because Microsoft, Sony, and Nintendo simply had more money than you. As you grow, a game studio's best option will be to seek out good investments and will port to the best consoles, rather than just taking a huge amount from a mega corporation trying to force out competition at the expense of the consumer. Anyway, conclusion is console exclusives are still built on the same anti-competitive, anti-consumer practices. It's just messier. But this is why streaming sites are so much worse. There is no excuse to hide behind when all streaming sites do is catalog video files. It's purely about licensing intellectual property, and nothing stops one guy with a shit product from going to a licensor and saying, hey, we'll pay you more if you don't sell this to anyone else. The bottom line is that is bad for the industry. So when Crunchyroll pioneers anime streaming and Daisuke is born to compete with them, and they both have Sword Art Online, I'm really happy. But the very next year, when all of a sudden Attack on Titan, the big new show that year, and a sequel to one of the anime Daisuke had is only on Crunchyroll, I can only look at them and say, oh, you don't actually care, do you? Of course, I only found out about this year. I can't believe that for 7 years I was paying you to practice this fucking nightmare. I should be angry, but you know what? Now it's just funny to me. This year, Sony ended the Funimation Crunchyroll partnership and is now looking to make a global sub and dub anime brand. From every side, the niche anime streaming site Crunchyroll, and by extension VRV, is being surrounded by mega corporations capable of buying out every exclusive license they can get. It's only a matter of time. I should be angry, but now I'm in stitches laughing because you're about to be hung by the very business practice you used to kill Daisuke. Oh, Crunchyroll. What a shame you didn't exclusivize nooses too. Let's continue.
Uncharted sells PlayStations and Xbox has no games. And no matter what some people may argue, it would be very, 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 very stupid to give up that competitive advantage.
Because we would lose a lot of money if we didn't is not an excuse for anti-consumer practices. Like, go to r/asshole design, look at any one of the posts there, and tell yourself, this is okay. It would be stupid for them to stop doing that because that would be giving up their competitive advantage. Like, technically you're correct, but that's beside the fucking point. It's also just, like, wrong. If we're working with a hypothetical of what would happen if exclusive licenses didn't exist, no streaming service would have that advantage over others, and instead they would be competing in ways that lets actual innovation prosper, rather than just having a contest of who has the most money to buy exclusive licenses that make all these services worse and proactively killing small startups and competition. A much stronger variant of this argument was Pedantic Romantic, whose argument basically boiled down to it's impractical for Crunchyroll to get rid of exclusive licenses. So let's take a moment to go through that and see if that's really out of their hands. His most expletive-laden shouting rant concludes with outrage at the fact that streaming sites have exclusive licenses and that they would have formed a pact to avoid exclusive licenses if they truly cared. This is remarkably daft. Not only is it how the streaming marketplace as a whole functions, it's even how cable TV does. Much like console exclusives, this is a bandwagon fallacy. Just because it's how everyone else does it doesn't make it right. Yes, cable TV does the same thing, and Game of Thrones is, I think, the most pirated show in history. It's the exact same problem as console exclusive. No one wants to buy cable purely for Game of Thrones, but HBO wants to force you to buy a service that you have to dick around with uninstalling every time Game of Thrones finishes for the season, and try to make it easier for you to get into other shows even if you simply do not care. Hopefully, you might even forget it out of laziness, and they can take their completely unearned $15 a month out of your account even when Game of Thrones isn't on. Isn't that kind of bullshit when they could still make a profit by just letting other services buy the damn fucking license? Truth is, they do it because abusing a monopoly makes them more money without the need to do any more work. Now, if you want to say that Crunchyroll can't form a pact with Netflix and Amazon because they're so much bigger and probably don't care, that's actually quite fair. But considering that you couldn't get Attack on Titan on Daisuke and 2 years later you couldn't get One Punch Man on Crunchyroll, despite both being huge shows, we can make the conclusion that even more niche companies that should care about the industry and have potential to form pacts were still making exclusive licenses against each other and fighting, rather than working together for the good of the consumer and the industry as a fucking whole. What am I supposed to do? Buy them all? Yes, that's how it works, etc. This is a misunderstanding I see a lot actually. I too believe that you are supposed to buy them all. My point is that if that is the intention, then it's by definition not a competitive market, and if it's not competitive, it won't innovate, which it doesn't. For a competitive market, the consumer has to choose one or the other. If they're buying both, they're not competing. If they're not competing with anyone, it's a monopoly, or in this case, it's barely competing in the form of who can get the most valuable exclusive licenses, making it an oligopoly. Crunchyroll, the primary addressee in the video, is a tiny fish in the streaming pool. They have 1 million subs, Netflix has 100. To suggest that Crunchyroll would be in a position to alter what is the way that not only its own industry functions, but the way its predecessor also functions, is pure deluded fantasy. Crunchyroll doesn't have enough power within the market. And even then, they have formed a partnership with one of the biggest players, Funimation. To do that, the rest is ad hominem, whatever. So firstly, I did acknowledge the Funimation partnership at 4:20 in the video. I don't blame you for missing it though, it's just a piece of text. But basically the problem with partnering with Funimation is that it's not a pact to avoid exclusive licenses and keep competition going between the two of them, it's a flat-out partnership. Assumedly, they're either sharing profits or sharing exposure to their own specialty for mutual gain. Keep in mind, Funimation and Crunchyroll aren't really competing in the same way Crunchyroll and Daisuke was. Funimation is mostly a disc and dubbing company. They even say as much in their video announcement.
And going forward, Funimation Now users will be able to watch dubs of Crunchyroll shows, as well as add them to their collection at home.
For these companies, there is mutual gain in joining hands. Remember, when Daisuke was around, they didn't do this. Instead, they just started buying exclusive licenses and even bought direct sequels to the things Daisuke exclusivized. I think Daisuke exclusivized Prince of Tennis anyway. So thinking that Crunchyroll is really good-willed enough to do this because they just want you to have the best service is probably a little naive. Also, when you search up a show they don't own the rights to, it doesn't tell you where you can get it legally. Crunchyroll only cares about you supporting the industry if it's from them. I know you guys know Crunchyroll employees, and I know they are pretty passionate about it, but let's be real. They don't own the company. AT&T does. Regardless, in both these instances, what they're not doing is agreeing to fight on equal playing fields in a war of innovation and who can please their customers the best. They're either finding mutual gain in differences, or they're trying to ruthlessly hurt their competitors. Now, it is certainly better for the consumer to kill competitors, as at least we don't have their shit split up, but as we can see through both of these sites' notorious reputations, it's not leading to innovation or the competitive market I wanted. And you might say, aha, but now HiDave has joined Verve, so they do want to give us everything. Here's the question, why now? Why specifically after Sony ripped Funimation away from them? Because my guess is that they wanted to simply run HiDive out of market, just like they did with Daisuke, but with Sony backing out to form their own bullshit streaming service, they saw immense danger from yet another giant megacorporation taking all the new licenses. This time, even the ones they already had. HiDive, of course, is going to make the shared revenue deal from VRV in a snap, because in case you hadn't noticed, they ain't doing so hot. Despite how positive Mother's Basement was about HiDive, this is what happened. Go figure, when you literally monopolize certain shows, the product itself doesn't matter, and it's why you're going to see Crunchyroll's new suspiciously timed dubbing service fail to make an impact. As nice as site and product improvements are, no one cares because exclusive licenses mean consumers aren't making meaningful choices about the product they use. Coming back to the practicality of Crunchyroll fighting exclusive licenses, what a lot of people don't understand about businesses is that it's incredibly flexible, and where laws don't fuck you over, intellectual property, it's mostly about negotiation and innovation. Now, you're totally right in thinking that they shouldn't just drop exclusive licenses on the spot because Netflix will snap them up. But what you can do as Crunchyroll is start to acknowledge the bullshit that is exclusive licenses and publicly make a promise with everyone that if the big streaming sites stop exclusives, so will you. Give people outside anime time to learn about it and the boycott will grow until it starts to hurt Netflix, at which point they should listen. In the meantime, you're going to earn trust back from the consumers by making up for the lack of competitive market and becoming an actual goodwill company. Start innovating even though you don't have to. That's it. That's all you have to do to make people happy. Just show them that you're trying. The core of this problem is ill intent. Alternatively, you can go nuclear and start paying for non-exclusive licenses. i.e., let's say you pay a higher than an ordinary license but less than exclusive to make a deal with a publisher that they cannot sell an exclusive license. It's selfless and not good for you in the short term, but that offer is very profitable to publishers and they will take it. After all, not only do they get a good chunk of money from the non-exclusive, they can still sell their license to other streaming sites as well. In the meantime, tell everyone what good work you're doing, continue to innovate, and continue to earn the hearts of consumers. This is granted the less appealing one to a smart business, but if you want to instantly earn back the community trust and prove without a shadow of doubt that you're going to stake your future on our goodwill as consumers, do that. And if all of this seems a bit too risky or reckless, try to remember, your time is limited. It's only a matter of time till Netflix eats you alive. There was a post on r/Crunchyroll somewhere, I can't find it now, but it's from a staff member who says basically that publishers actually prefer to put their stuff on Crunchyroll over Netflix, so you still have leverage, clearly. Why else would Netflix not just run you out of town immediately? Thing is, with your public image dropping fast, it won't be long till you lose that leverage and are ended by Netflix's ability to offer much more money for exclusives than you can. Alright, cool, let's move on with Jeff's video.
Exclusivity has been a core part of the entertainment business since basically its inception. Movie theaters have been competing this way for almost a century. You better believe that which theater in town had Wizard of Oz was more important than which one had comfortable seats or better popcorn. And going back to the 1600s in London, the Globe Theatre was a success because Shakespeare's plays played exclusively there.
Wow, Jeff, so you're against gay marriage then? This is called an appeal to tradition fallacy, where you try to take comfort in the idea that, well, this is the way it's always been done, so therefore it must be right. I don't feel like I need to spend much time on this. I don't care if it's how theaters did it. I don't care if it's how cable TV does it. I don't care if it's how games do it. It's all shit. Just because that's how we've always done it doesn't make it right, especially not now with the new context that the internet presents. i.e., it is now technologically possible to give consumers what they want. It's just licensees choose not to because they can use it to force out competition. Now, if you're wondering why these complaints are so much more prevalent with anime though, it's because there are vastly more consumers of Japanese anime than there are Japanese anime. Not having things like Breaking Bad on Netflix is annoying, but it's not atrocious because there's a lot of other things. But having everything in our already niche medium divided amongst like 4 services, it's an outrage.
Unless everything about copyright and intellectual property changes overnight, and you could definitely make a good argument that maybe it should.
What? What the fuck? So even you are open to the fact that intelligent property might be creating problems. IP law is literally the source of my whole fucking argument. Why are we this opposed to each other?
Exclusivity is not going to go away. You may not like it.
I guess you're right. I guess we should all just go home then, cause you said so. Can you imagine if black slaves were just like, oh yeah, we know we have a good argument, but unless everything about slavery laws change overnight, it's just not gonna happen. No need for a protest, guys. I guess we should all just go home. Or not home, we're slaves after all. Obviously taking that to a logical extreme to prove a point here. Nobody call me racist and ignore my fucking points, please. Not saying my plights are the levels of slaves, and who am I kidding? You're gonna do it anyway. And again, I don't even want the IP laws changed. That ill intent I talked about before, that's the core problem, and it's near impossible to tie that down with laws. Again, people have been debating this shit for centuries. All I want is for consumers to learn about exclusivity and the competitive markets and to embrace piracy as a method of boycott when they see the ill intent. As for companies, I already gave 2 methods for you to relatively easily give consumers what they want. None of this is impossible or unreasonable.
Exclusivity is not going to go away. You may not like it, but the content is the product, not the service.
Jeff, it's literally called a streaming service. I don't even know what this line is supposed to mean. What a product is or deserves to be is not dictated by you, it's dictated by whatever a consumer is willing to pay for and a competitor is willing to offer. The jewelry in a jewelry store is the product, but that doesn't mean stores won't work to make every part of the experience better for the consumer. That's the beauty of a competitive market. It's good for consumers and rewards businesses that treat their consumers well and pioneer the industry. It's only dictated by the absolute core when you have a monopoly on something like here, and even then there is still a point where products can be so terrible that the consumer will completely forego it. But things have to get pretty abusive for that, and that's the issue here.
You wouldn't expect to be able to play Mario on your PlayStation, and you shouldn't expect to be able to get all of the anime in one place. It just doesn't work that way.
You know, I always wondered what the thesis for this video was supposed to be. I just worked it out. It's no. It's literally just no. Just doesn't work that way. Fuck out of here.
And while it sucks that you have to pay for multiple streaming services to watch all the shows, it's not really reasonable to expect anything else from any company that's obeying the law. Unless that company has enough money to buy every license, and in that case, it would be a monopoly, which would be a lot worse for us as consumers.
Alright. Ready for me to blow your fucking mind? No, a monopoly would be better than what we have. Thing is, everything already functions almost exactly like how a monopoly would in this market already. This is what I've been talking about. If intelligent property is so different from each other that one anime is not a replacement for another, then it means that no two anime are in competition. I.e., just because I watch Hero Academia does not mean I no longer need to, or want to, watch Made in Abyss. Innovation in individual anime, i.e. making an original story, is incentivized by the monopoly that intelligent property is designed to give you. But when you aggregate a bunch of IPs together under a service, and everyone else tries to do the same thing, competition takes the form of trying to take control of as many monopolies as possible rather than improving the actual service. Given this, it means to exclusivize anime is to monopolize your service because that service is the only one that can give you that individual product. Technically though, it's an oligopoly because they're trying to grab enough shows that you'll have to sign up if you want to watch one particular one, like, legally. But it does not mean you won't need another service. That means there is limited competition. You haven't given me an explanation of what this supposed monopoly would look like, by the way. So I have to guess that the only reason you think a monopoly would be worse is because there haven't been any horrendous acts of anti-consumerism like price gouging. But laws already exist to control that because lawmakers already know intelligent properties are monopolies and are prone to exploitation. So the only issue that exists now are stagnation, and these very grey complicated questions about how exclusive licenses affect competition and if they should be controlled. The worst, most obvious problems with monopolies are banned out and stagnation isn't a crime, so these companies are already acting almost exactly like they would act if there was only one company. The only difference is that their method of competing right now actually hurts the product because there's now less shows on any one service. If there was only one company, there still wouldn't be able to price gouge because of antitrust laws, and there still wouldn't be any innovation or site improvement, but at least we'd have everything in one place. Granted, okay, there's limited improvement right now, so you would lose that. But you know what? The only times Crunchyroll truly innovated was before they had competition. Simulcasting and Crunchyroll Q were both pioneered before 2012. Maybe if they weren't spending so much money on exclusive licenses, they might use some of their budget to innovate to bring in some more of the potential market from piracy. Because as much as you don't want to admit it, no matter how much of a monopoly a streaming site is, it still has to compete with piracy. It's just that currently, there's no point even trying, because just getting the shows is vastly more important than any sort of innovation you could do. And if you're not convinced, I'd like to point you to how people celebrated when Anime Strike died. Yourself included. That is not a thing that happens in normal markets. People don't celebrate when services go out of business. They get ignored because no one cares about a subpar product. KFC, for example, is a brand that has apparently gone to shit in America. If they went out of business, do you think people would celebrate? No, of course not. What's the difference here exactly? Oh yeah, Amazon taking exclusive licenses for their product made every other service worse, and this time in particular, their product was noticeably bad, rather than just the secret evil of exclusive licenses that no one notices. The difference here is that there is no competitive alternative. Consumers are at the mercy of Amazon. You think you're the reason Anime Strike died? No, because consumers saw something that went too far on the bullshit meter, and they went and found the only competitive market still available to them. Piracy. That's why people celebrated, because people started to notice the effects of individual shows being monopolized. How can you call this competition when you betray your own argument by being happy about its death? You think a single company innovating once every year or so, and then other services simply matching them, maybe, eventually? You think that's a competitive market? You think that justifies the existence of practices that make consumers hate new contenders? You can't just say, oh, it would be a monopoly. Tell me why, and tell me what exactly changes from the current situation if Crunchyroll was the only service. Because you and I both know that for some weird reason, the more competition this industry got, the more it started to suck. And you know what? The exact same problem is coming for Steam. That precious example that you think proves your own point, when instead it, proves mine. With Uplay and Origin exclusivizing all their new stuff, including the sequels to everything on Steam, people are starting to get pissed in the exact same way. The only difference here is that there are far more games than anime, so it's not that noticeable. Yet. You realize this isn't supposed to happen, right? This isn't competition, this is fighting. It's not trying to improve your own product, it's trying to make the others worse. And it's only making it harder and harder to boycott these shady business practices or products effectively. Okay, from 905 to 1016, he talks about subtitles. I don't see any ill intent in them, and I think it's kind of a non-issue.
A lot of pirates just use these principles as an excuse. The low video quality argument does seem a bit more reasonable, since Crunchyroll's player hasn't always been the best, and they did temporarily dramatically lower the bitrate of their video library a year ago, but that turned out to be a mistake made in an effort to improve their encoding infrastructure rather than something they did to make more money.
I'm from Crunchyroll Relation. I'm going to talk today about human perception and reaction to video compression changes. So with back catalog video, it's a different viewer habit we found with some changes we discovered, and it should be known, of course, but they binge watch. So when you're back catalog viewing, the quality is not as important. We ran into problems with basically looking at numbers, looking at capability and the scaling we would have to do with our plans in the future. And so we re-encode our whole back catalog with the DC in mind, and also at a level that we were looking at is more of mid-tier or lower tier that we would then come back and get the higher quality. But we were running this for 6 months, before that even, we did a lot of it, and it was...
So if you don't know what this is a video someone found on YouTube of a tech presentation done by Crunchyroll/Elation staff member, basically admitting to the fact that Crunchyroll was trying to cut costs on video quality by trying to figure out how far they can push the quality on their backlog content without anyone noticing, while simultaneously lowering the time between changing from simulcast quality to simulcast quality to backlog for about 6 months until people caught on. The dramatic drop that Mother's Basement is referring to was a result of this, and it is clearly a false statement to say any of this was done in the interest of improving video quality. Unless by improve you mean efficiency. Now after the backlash, they did discover a better method and improved it, but as they say in the video...
So we were hoping we weren't going to switch and transition the way we did. So then when we did, and we had the customers freak out, we did this. Quickly we analyzed and we figured, we started looking at it like why short people bits. If your 1080p doesn't play perfectly, the 720p, as long as it looks good, it has enough bits, it's going to scale, and at least for now, and we said let's jump to these higher bit rates, and let's do a mid-tier, which we plan on doing, that will focus on more of a 4 megabit target, but we were on maybe 6 to 8 megabit. Because what they were doing with frame comparisons on the threads we were looking at, and basically we upped it, we checked, and we found the CRF value of 15 to 18 would actually keep it where that you could be plenty better, as seen previously in the older Crunchyroll codes.
They did it because of the controversy. It wasn't fixing a mistake. Now, I don't blame you for missing this, as it's an obscure video with 200 views. In fact, you couldn't have seen it because it came out after your video. Some might say that the actual issue is with the confidence that you just declare, oh, it just turned out to be an attempt to improve encoding, as if there wasn't even the slightest chance in the world that this could be wrong. When in actual fact, the thing you're assumedly sourcing here, since you don't give one, is Crunchyroll's press release after the controversy. Real reliable, the word of the company in question. But you just claim it as fact when you should have said it allegedly. The thing is though, you always fucking do this. You're always so sure of yourself about everything. Like, even I had my doubts about bringing up this video as evidence since it's so jargony, and hell, maybe I missed something between the lines. I know I'm not infallible, I know I can be wrong, but you are so unbelievably arrogant that the thought that you could be wrong hasn't even crossed your mind. You're so happy to just assert that you're right and dismiss anyone as a child or entitled or some other bullshit motive argument that can't be grounded. I'm sorry, I debated being civil like usual, but I'm reckless at heart, so I'm gonna cut loose for once. Thing is, none of that truly bothers me, but that arrogance is what led you to do the thing that genuinely pissed me off. I've seen loads of detractors of mine over the past year. None of them have bothered me, even when throwing out the nastiest insults. I don't care. I just zone it out. It doesn't hurt my argument. When Crunchyroll employee Miles posted this, I thought it was funny. Literally, the night of the piracy video, I printed it out and stuck it next to my desk. People getting angry is just like part of the process. I just want discourse and debate to continue. But you! Before you posted this video, you admitted on Twitter that you wanted to make a response but didn't want to give it any exposure. And when you came to actually make the video, you didn't tell anyone where you were getting the arguments from. And on Twitter, when someone asked you if you were responding to me, you just said, not giving direct promotion, but it does address the video's arguments. Oh, but wait a second. Oh, I'm sorry. You did direct viewers to the original argument. In the fucking tags! But that's not the point. Look. You are not infallible. I don't care how bad you think someone's idea is. There is always the chance you could be strawmanning, or wrong, or any number of other things. And to intentionally minimize how much of your audience gets to see, and let me put emphasis on this, both sides of the argument, is downright disgusting. And I don't need you for views. I already gained a great understanding of the algorithms by that time I made that video. I knew it would eventually get a lot, and I knew yours would fail to get anywhere close. The majority of the people who watched your videos probably saw mine at some stage, so I don't think there was much harm done. But if You Should Pirate Anime wasn't as successful as it was, people would, by your intention, be experiencing my argument from you alone with none of the evidence and none of the logic. It was the principle that mattered. If I was anyone else, a video with a 98% approval rating, well above my peers, that clearly brought something new and interesting and convincing to the table would have died without anyone seeing it, and you would have gladly sat there and let it happen. No, you would have celebrated it. You're poison to the open marketplace of ideas. Alright, going from 1048 to 1204, you begin to talk about how, for the most part, legal services provide better quality since they get the official rips, and compared to illegal streaming, now that I've tried illegal for a while, I'd probably agree. But not to torrents, which is what I now use. I understand most torrents are taken straight from Crunchyroll, but we'll talk about why that doesn't really matter when it's relevant. Then you talk about Blu-rays and downloading to avoid buffering or something or other, until we get to 1253 where we'll start playing again.
But that ignores the bigger underlying problem of this whole mentality, namely the idea of voting with your wallet in the first place. Whenever I bring this topic up, I hear ad nauseum that people don't care about my moral argument for supporting the anime industry.
Just for the record, I never should have called it a moral argument. It's not like you're moral and I'm not. I believe what I'm doing is right for the industry as well. The only difference is that I have to argue my case as to why I'm moral, while you can pretend that just because you're following the law it makes you a good person. Oh god, I've started to become jaded.
That, as consumers in a free market, it's their right to choose the service that most benefits them.
This is a straw man. I never said this. I just said that consumers are simply going to go to the best service, but with the right innovation, it's easy for legal sites to gain those people. It's just the innovation isn't happening because exclusive licenses kill the competitive market. Consumers pirating in this market is simply understandable, and rather than virtue signaling, you might as well try something new. And I call it virtue signaling because you've been doing it for 11 years, so either you somehow haven't caught on yet that it's not working, or you simply just get a kick out of the moral crusade.
But Hug Animu isn't part of the free market. They're a criminal organization leeching off of it.
They compete whether you like it or not. Being illegal does not mean you aren't still trying to appeal to the same demographic. Legalities have nothing to do with the concept of competition. Street races compete. If you're in America, prostitutes compete. And counterfeits compete with clothing lines if you want to cross legal-illegal example. Just because stealing is illegal doesn't mean jewelry stores shouldn't have alarm buttons. Regardless of whether it's legal or moral, it's a force that is going to hurt profits. That's the bottom line, and you must fight it whether it be through law or innovation. The fact that you don't consider it competition because it's illegal is just you changing the definition of words. It means nothing. Also, interestingly, drug dealers compete, but the concept of drug territories is almost a direct parallel for how anti-competitive exclusive licenses are, because rather than improve their own product, they tried to take out competition by literally removing it as an option for the consumer. Although legally a better comparison would probably be market division, which is equally bad for the same reasons.
They don't compete with the legal streaming platforms, they just steal from them and sell their product at a lower price with the same profit margin because they didn't have to pay for it.
Again, it sounds like you're trying to say that legal can't possibly compete with illegal because illegal can do everything legal can. But except after prohibition was abolished, the black market for alcohol didn't continue, did it? There are things illegal cannot do that can make legal more appealing. In fact, I gave you a couple of innovations in my last video that illegal sites can't copy, but of course, those aren't acknowledged here. Again, this is why you need to show people what you're arguing against. By omitting shit like that, you're misrepresenting my points. Also, good as time as any, a couple of people told me that 9anime was way better than Kiss Anime, and it has the ability to transfer over your Mal profile. Wow, look at that. Illegal sites are innovating to try and improve themselves to get the most customers and actually manage to sway public perception because of it. That's kind of weird, isn't it? That they're innovating faster than legal sites? It's almost like they actually have a competitive market. The reason I bring that up, though, is because one of my proposed innovations was malintegration, and what these sites have seem to contradict the idea that they can't do it. But, for the record, this isn't the same thing as true integration. 9anime lets you import your own Mal profile to their version of Mal that you can edit through their profile, and Kiss Anime has an add-on that lets you edit your Mal page from their website. But it doesn't automatically update based on which episode you're watching. It's basically just having a convenient nearby window that lets you edit your Mal. That's all. There is no true connection between episodes on Kiss Anime and an episode on Mal.
Okay, look, say I really don't like Best Buy's layout and customer service, but I want to buy a $2,000 4K TV. So instead of buying the TV from them at that price, I buy it for $300 from a hairy guy who found it after it fell off the back of a truck. Have I voted with my wallet and supported a superior competitor there? Of course not. All I've done is pay a thief to steal a TV.
If Best Buy had monopolized TVs so that no one else was allowed to sell them, treated their consumers like shit, and didn't try to improve because they know consumers have no other choice but to go to them for TV, throwing away any need to innovate in the process, and then vocally, as a form of protest, I buy that stolen TV from the hairy guy, that by the way isn't actually stolen, it's pirated, i.e. no tangible loss, there's a difference, then I take that TV, I wave it in front of Best Buy store with a large group of other people who have done the same thing, and I shout, fuck you, bring back the competitive market, and then I go home and enjoy my TV, then yes, it would be perfectly justified to steal, and it would function as the same as supporting a competitor, as it would force Best Buy to get off its ass, start innovating, and let someone else sell some fucking TVs. 1352 to 1424 is just a rehash about how legal can't beat illegal, which I already talked about, and malware, which isn't relevant if you're torrenting, which I now believe to be the superior product over illegal streaming. And finally, we get to the last point of the video. So I'm just gonna let it all play out and then tackle it all at once.
The stupid risks that you put on yourself when you use these sites, let's be clear here. Hug Animu would not be able to exist as it does without the legal streaming platforms providing them the content. Before Crunchyroll, we did not get every single anime the same day it aired in Japan, not even through fan subbers. Sure, really popular shows with huge fan followings like Naruto would get almost simultaneous fan sub releases, but they were the exceptions, not the rule. Western otaku could wait weeks, even months for fan sub projects of more niche shows to get caught up, and some shows didn't generate enough interest to get translated or finished at all. There was no pirate site that had it all because it all wasn't available, not in English anyway. The only reason that every single show gets translated now is that Crunchyroll proved there was a market for it. Fan passion just doesn't get niche content translated. Economic incentives do. And while pirate sites definitely make a lot of money, they don't make enough to stay profitable if they suddenly had to pay a huge team of translators to subtitle every single show as quickly as possible. Some people have suggested that anime fans should stop paying for streaming platforms altogether to force them to innovate, which is really absurdly stupid. And here's why. If that happened and the legal sites started running low on funds, they would start reducing their acquisitions to just the most popular series. And on the pirate sites that everyone thought they were so clever to use instead, pretty soon every niche title would start coming with Google Translate subs. Because as much as pirates would like to convince you that you're just paying for a service with these streaming platforms, you're also buying the content and all of the work that goes into translating it for you. And if people stop buying it, the content stops coming. That's how it works. Supply follows demand. Economics 101. And that's what this boils down to, an economic argument, not a moral one. If the anime you seek out and watch is worth your time, it's also worth your money, and you should pay with it, not because it's the right thing to do, but because it directly contributes to bringing over more for everyone else to enjoy.
So, how does Mother's Basement finish the video? Something shocking or concrete to put me in my place? No, he hits me with the most common argument I've seen since I started speaking out about this. Okay, so first off, it is not a lack of demand in supply and demand if the demand is yelling at you to give them a certain supply. That was a gross misuse of that term. This is a boycott, not a lack of demand. That in itself basically sums it up, but in layman's terms, no business is that stupid that it just lets themselves die. That does not happen in response to boycotts, that only happens when a market is genuinely dying. It's the most batshit insane idea that Crunchyroll, knowing a video like this exists with 1.2 million views and a community very vocal about what they do and what goes on, and then goes, well guys, I guess we'll just have to downside. We clearly have no other option. God forbid, listen to the boycott! Boycotts do not have a track record for ending companies or causing downside outside of what the boycott wanted. Go search for it, you can't find clear examples. This is why I say it doesn't matter if the torrents we use are ripped straight from Crunchyroll. Streaming sites disappearing or even downgrading because of this movement, I simply do not believe will happen. At some point before that, they will have to listen. And even then, let's take a hypothetical. Let's say all streaming sites didn't respond to the boycott and grinded into the ground until they hit bankruptcy. Now what? Is it back to the dark times of anime? No, of course not. The evidence doesn't take into account that it's the current year. I can't believe I'm using that argument unironically. Anime is almost mainstream now, did you forget that? Anime is huge, and with that comes more fans and more demand for translators. Like, did you know that an anime from 1975 got fan-subbed last year? What about all the early adopters of mangas that get fan-translated? There is so much demand for this shit now, it's unreal. The quality can get so good too, and manga can even have its own personal flares based on the translator. Whatever would we do in a world without lolly-pooping noises and the rumble of scientific triumph? Furthermore, Patreon exists now and it's not uncommon for it to be used for illicit activities. Make no mistake, new fan subgroups will form and people will monetize them. In short, the more anime fans there are and the less translators there are, the more people will be willing to pay to get them. As a result, more translators will seek to monetize it. That is supply and demand. That is economics 101. You utter pool noodle. Alright, that's all the arguments. The rest is just ad hominem and him claiming he knows the motive of people who pirate. Alright, let's talk about some other arguments. A lot of people, including Miles himself, said that innovations had already happened, or more to the point, lots of them had happened because I've changed my stance slightly. But remember that I said for innovations to happen, companies require a rough situation. Now that can be forced by a competitive market, like it should be, or it can also happen when a company is starting up. Crunchyroll used to be on 0 subscribers, that counts as a rough situation, and back then, nothing was gained from exclusivizing because they had no competitors. I did say this, but Crunchyroll hasn't added anything to sweeten the deal in ages. Did you know that the only times Crunchyroll truly innovated was before they had competition? Simulcasting and Crunchyroll Q were both pioneered before 2012. And lo and behold, all the innovations mentioned here are either not innovations like customer support, or innovations made like 8 years ago. And if you need any more proof, half of them are notorious for being messy and poorly maintained because they simply don't matter anymore. The only thing they need to do as a company is throw money at exclusive licenses. Even the HTML5 player that they just released is buggy as all hell and probably only just ended beta because Digibro kicked up a fuss that amassed over 1 million views. The idea that they don't improve their own product is, of course, not perfect. Sometimes Crunchyroll might freak out a bit at the Funimation split and start doing dubs, even though it probably won't make a difference. Or with Verve, maybe they might once in a blue moon innovate with offline downloads, but I'm being very lenient on the definitive innovation here. Doing what Netflix has already done is not a risk, because it's nothing new. It's a safe step that a company can do when it gets skittish and doesn't realize how powerful monopolizing individual shows has been. And again, the rarity with which they do these things compared to non-IP industries is night and day. To be perfectly honest, I came into some information in this video that implied that a lot of Crunchyroll stagnation actually came from outsourcing code to Moldova, or Crunchyroll having skeleton staff because everyone's working on Verve. But here's the question. Why though? Is it because they don't need skilled workers perchance? Is it because the programming pales in comparison to buying exclusive licenses? Verve has quality of life improvements that are convenient to do since they're building from the ground up, and yes, it does do one or two things to match with its competitors, but at the end of the day, Verve's primary selling point is that they have, wait for it, more exclusive licenses. No true innovation, no revolutionary ideas, it's just another 2-bit legal streaming site. Its primary purpose isn't to create something new, it's to escape from Crunchyroll's horrifying legacy code and create a platform that can incorporate all these licenses. There's also the idea that nobody wants innovation, and to that I say, no. Another Crunchyroll staff argued against the malinnovation, but I don't even need to reply to this one because this guy fucking nailed it. But I will add that shit like Steam Spy exists and organizes an equivalent of what you would consider precious data, and it's not hurting Steam. It's just a fucking excuse, man. Steam is just goodwill. That's the only difference. Another popular and interesting argument I got was, you don't need to pirate, why don't you just boycott? Because a boycott relies on a competitive market. When people boycott Chick-fil-A, they're still allowed to eat chicken at competing restaurants, but intelligent property can't be considered different branches of chicken. You don't get chicken from Chick-fil-A and KFC. You have a preference and only go to one at a time, and that dictates the one you go to most. That's not the same with IPs. And that boycott of Chicken-fil-A didn't even work, by the way. How hard do you think it's going to be for what is effectively a monopoly? And guess who agrees with me on that?
Secondly, because if something is valuable enough to be worth your time, it's valuable enough to be worth your money. I mean, if you're protesting the Nestle Corporation, you don't go out and shoplift Nesquik, you choose not to buy it in a boycott, because that's what makes the point, that you're willing to forego something you enjoy to avoid supporting bad business practices or bad people. Stealing from people who have nothing to do with it, or even people who do, muddies the message. So then, maybe we should stop watching content from people we take issue with in protest. Maybe the principle's the same, although in practice it is slightly different. You can buy generic store-brand chocolate milk mix, but there's no store-brand Chinatown, or store-brand Kenshin, or store-brand MMO Junkie. If you want to protest creators like this, you will miss out on some good or even great stories. Your cultural landscape will be less rich and varied than it might otherwise be. I guess whether you're willing to deprive yourself like that for the sake of your principles, or whether you even think it's right to do so, will come down to the individual. Now, as for me, if the tone of this video hasn't made it clear already, I'm torn.
Trying to encourage people to give up on all anime while we wait for the industry to pull its head out of its ass would be impossible. But that's the beauty of piracy. It gives us power as consumers over these abusable intelligent property laws. How would you like it if I didn't like what you said, so I re-uploaded your videos or stopped donating to your Patreon? Unique Namesaurus videos are intelligent properties. I don't have a competitive market either. If you want to do that as a form of boycott, I believe that is exactly my argument. So please, go right ahead, I won't copyright strike you. You earning money off of it is a bit more ill intent, but I'll let that slide just to prove my point. A lot of people brought up buying merch, and I'm cool with that as well, but only figures. I think Blu-rays are a dying medium, and to support that is the wrong message. Figures are on the rise though, so I like them. Personally though, I've never been much of a collector. I'd rather just go full charity. Days. The one who wrote the article left a comment, and one of the notable things is he took issue with encouraging illegal streaming sites. He talked about viruses and shit. I said the competitive market means that shouldn't be a problem. He said the viruses have non-visible effects, and I'm like, oh yeah, good point. At least until it gets exposed, which I mean, debatably it does, but whatever. This is all moot now anyway, because I found a convenient way to torrent, and I've honestly never been happier with the experience, which is actually what they recommended should I be dead set on illegal. Honestly, my only complaint with torrents has been the lack of comments and a community, but the pure elation I feel being able to search something and not get let down is, it's pure bliss. I don't think there's anything else of particular importance here, but I'll put the text on screen for posterity's sake. And now, because I forgot one thing, I'm going to put it in the end. One point that Jeff did have is that if streaming sites go down, fan subs won't get the official source videos and instead have to use web rips or broadcasts. Going with the hypothetical I used before, that is assuming streaming sites will let themselves die in the first place, or like 5 of them, none of them will pay attention to the boycott apparently and just sit down and die. Going with that hypothetical, then yes, maybe there will be in fact a dip in quality as we're forced to go to broadcast. But you know what? If all of them bankrupt from something that is unbelievably obvious, I will be amazed if a pioneer who knows where these sites went wrong and is ready to give consumers what they want doesn't rise from the ashes to claim the huge fortune. Hell, at that point, with all of the expensive exclusive licenses dead, I can guarantee you 100% that there will be at least one person to pick up that torch. Me. But before it comes to that, I want to remind you all that we're here to make a statement first and foremost. Tell anyone who will listen that we're sending a message to Crunchyroll and streaming sites like them. A message that will undercut the entirety of our detractors. A message that says, we're not entitled, we're willing to pay, just not to you. I spent like 40 hours researching and gathering evidence to write this video and end this debate once and for all, but I can't do it alone. There is still one last piece of evidence I need, the final nail in the coffin, and I need your help to get it. So donate to the Anime Dormitories facility and wipe the self-righteous smirks off everyone's faces. Because we are the Pirates of the West, and we're about to shock everyone by paying off our own fucking bounty.